Well, we played last Wednesday, and I came across a few things I wanted to discuss. Chief among them, have you ever found your monsters to be lacking, to be a bit not too great? Well, in this video, I'm going to be going over 2 scenarios that should help you from my current campaigns, one of which was a random encounter, and the other is yet to happen. Fear not, my Crusade players, there will only be mild spoilers. You can still watch this video. The first encounter happened last session, which happened to be the first. They started with being attacked by a dragon. It was a purple homebrew dragon named Vardul, and she's our first returning villain that I might go over at another time in a video specifically about it. But anyway, they were now hiking through its frozen territory. It's cold, it's bad. The way I use random tables is a bit odd. I use my own custom tables that suit my setting and their location. I also use a rule from some older D&D edition, but it works in pretty much any game where you find monsters. I think it's from, like, original D&D, maybe Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, I'm not sure. Each creature in the table, assuming they roll a creature, not a cool rock puzzle or whatever, has a % chance in lair stat, ranging from 0 to 100. This determines how likely it is that the monster is in its lair. That means every time you roll a d20 or the d12 or the d10 or a d6 to see what encounter you get, you also roll a d100, which is 2d10. You take the first number from the first die and the second number from the second. And if the number is below the % chance, that means the creature's in its lair. For example, on my sheet, a brown bear has a 40% chance of being in its cave, which means there would then be 2 bears, and now they have their cubs with them, which makes them super aggressive, which is always fun, and will probably lead to a more memorable encounter, especially if they find maybe another traveler who was killed by the bears. They might have, like, goodies or information on their corpse. Anyway, my players rolled the dreaded number 6, and that means I rolled 2d12 frozen undead. I chose basic skeletons, give them cold resistance, and happened to roll around 14 undead, which was really bad. Even though that's actually just average, I was just bad at making the plan. The sheet was flawed. This essentially meant that the party, which consists of 5 third-level characters, a barbarian, a druid, 2 bloodhunters, and a warlock, they were absolutely screwed. But me being a complete wangrod, decided to add a much bigger, more dangerous wight, which are intelligent undead, who are more beefier than skeletons, having a challenge rating of 3 instead of 1/4. This could have been worse for my players if I'd rolled beneath a 10 on my D100, because that would mean that they would be in a dark mage's lair, like a necromancer or something. I'd roll 3d12 instead in that situation, which would have been devastating. I decided this encounter would be much better if I tied it to one of the player characters' backstories or her general personality. So now they were frozen remains of a lost scouting party from the same vampire clan as one of our blood hunters. This meant that I could have them say his name and that sort of thing, and generally make him feel really bad for hurting them, which is awesome, and it worked quite well, I think. I had them crawl from the snow and the ice beneath the party as they were setting up camp, gaining a surprise round, meaning the players didn't get a turn for the first round of combat, and 2 of them were sleeping, so I was able to deal a significant amount of damage before they were even conscious. You're probably coming to the conclusion I was, seeing after about 2 rounds of combat, that this fight was way too stacked against the players. This combat was in the first session, so they didn't really have a grasp on their characters yet. The encounter would roughly come out as balanced for a 6th level party, according to the rules, while these guys were only level 3, and they had a surprise round where the party was going to sleep, meaning that none of them had their armor on, except the warlock who cast mage armor at will. So essentially they were dealing with, like, 12s to 10s. I think one of them might have even had a 9 for AC. Really bad. I also really didn't account for the fact that skeletons are actually much more dangerous in a group than zombies, who have the same challenge rating and fill a similar role as mindless undead, but throughout your players, so your actually important villains can stand in the backline monologuing.
You Sly dog! You got me monologuing! I can't believe it!
This is because they have short bows, which allow them to attack pretty much anywhere from anyone from anywhere on the battlefield. Fortunately, my players have been playing D&D for a while now, and most of them know my tendency to throw ridiculous encounters at them, one of which involved a group of hobgoblins that had the moving foot of a giant golem, and the other was chased with a challenge rating 15 Nabasu, a demon who can eat your soul, against a party of 2 level 6 characters. So in that situation, if they screwed up and died, they can't be resurrected, so that was really bad. So they know what they're getting into. They just barely got out without any characters dying. One of them had their hit point maximum, not the amount of hit points they are at, the amount they have, drained by the white, which, if it had reduced them to 0 hit points, would have instantly killed them and raised them as a zombie under its control. And I would not have made that a standard zombie. That would have been their character sheet, but with undead and chaotic evil on it. So, this brings me to what I should have done. This was not supposed to be a difficult encounter. It was in the first session, so any death would have been supremely undramatic and sad for the players. What I should have done was very simple. I should have made the skeletons minions. This is Solon from 4th edition, and it means they use the exact same stat block, but their hit points are reduced to 1, and they do not take half damage from AoE spells and stuff like that. They're basically a way to throw a ton of enemies at the players without having to track their hit points or completely overwhelm your party. This would have made the combat much more like being attacked by orcs in Lord of the Rings. And a lot less like a scene from Goblin Slayer where everyone is in constant danger. Making them feel more like a heroic and badass team, and less like they're all gonna be eaten in a second. That can come later. Speaking of later, the second part of this video is going to contain spoilers for any of my Crusade players, so if you want to be completely surprised, leave now. Awesome, still here? Great. In a couple of sessions, the party is likely to come across a massive encounter involving lots of skeletons as a meat shield for another villain. This combat is going to be, if I do it correctly, devastating. I want there to be a palpable sense of danger for there to be a decent chance that they might lose a character. For this, I need special skeletons. I could use the normal skeletons, but this would be in a location with a pretty specific setting-related history, and I wanted something cool and interesting and new. I need these skeletons to be dangerous, but I am also keeping in mind I want to use them as minions, so I want to also be able to throw more dangerous versions of them later that aren't minions with their full hit points. I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of them, maybe like upwards of 20, and they were created by a dark wizard whose magic has a glowing green acidy flavor, so I want them to reflect that. These creatures, which I'm calling Dread Skulls, are going to be available in the comments for anyone to use if I remember to put them there. I like to use a website called Gipfyglyph.com to make my stat blocks. It's super easy to use and they come out very pretty very quickly. That is GifyglYph.com. Firstly, I'm going to look at the normal skeleton from the monster manual. They're CR 1/4 and have a pretty decent stat block, which is dex heavy. I'm going to make 2 versions, some with bows and some with swords, making sure there's about 2 archers for every 8 swordsmen, so they can't all fire at once and insta-kill any of my party. That's really what you need to think about when you're using range, especially characters who can do range and melee. They're gonna smoke your party if there's a lot of them. That was a problem in the last skeleton encounter. These guys are a threat, but in this case they are not the biggest threat in the room, so not gonna give them both. Starting off, while I'm using these as minions, I want to be able to use them later, so I'm going to decide that they are CR 1/2 and have 16 hit points instead of 13. To get this number, I looked at another CR 1/2 undead and saw the shadows have 16. This might actually come out a bit low, but that doesn't matter in this situation, because shadows have a lot of resistance to, like, I think, non-magical weapons, so they probably have a bit lower hit points. Additionally, I gave them resistance to necrotic and immunity to acid, which just makes sense. Replaced their languages with Terran and Wicked, basically my settings version of Common and Abyssal. That's simplifying a bit, but don't want to get into it. I like the idea that their swords are dripping with magical acid, so making them deal that instead of piercing would seem like a good idea. And I noodled with their ability scores a bit, giving them a lower constitution because they're skeletons, but up their dex and charisma because I wanted them to be quick and intimidating. I also love the idea of them crawling on walls and the ceiling as they swarm towards you, like, that's horrifying. So I give them a climbing speed equal to their walking speed to make them like insects swarming. Gross. Lastly, I give them a trait called Wicked Core, where when they dive, they damage all creatures around them as they explode with acid, because I wanted getting close to these creatures to be extra scary. I didn't go over everything here because that would take too long. The stat block should be up on screen, but it's mostly stuff like changing the damage dice to suit my needs and such. I think they're pretty cool as far as skeletons go, but if something seems too powerful in combat or not powerful enough, I could change that mid-combat. I've never tested my encounter before. They might need revisions. You know how hard the battle should be, so you're absolutely clear and have my permission to change any monster mid-encounter. You know exactly how threatening you want it to be, so make it that threatening. Anyway, I think that's it. My stat blocks are in the comments, but if not, I'll be posting them on Twitter, which is @bubble_rum. That's bubble with 2 B's at the start and in the middle. Run something. It's easier than you think, and have a good day.